Race cars.
From bebop to hip-hop, American music evolved from the end of World War II to the hip-hop era, passing through the filter of the rock and roll music of the 1960s. That music arose from the struggle for full social, economic, and political participation for African Americans. From the rebellious bebop following the World War II through the changes in expression of the political agitation of the 1950s through Miles Davis, John Coltrane, and Thelonious Monk, to the smooth jazz of the 1960s, from Herbert Hancock to Joshua Redman and Wynton Marsalis, the beat goes on. Today, we have the hip-hop sound that arose from the rap of the 1980s that replaced disco and techno music, expressions of the globalization of culture. During that evolution, Chicago-born and New York-based jazz percussionist Warren Smith has made a contribution. Starting as a professional at 14, Warren speaks to the changes in the society and the culture of American music through his work in jazz and rock and roll, through the evolution. He's composed and managed music with the greatest artists of his era, from Gil Evans to Janis Joplin and Max Roach. Warren accompanied Barbra Streisand, Aretha Franklin, and many rock and roll stars as a pit drummer in New York and on tour. Already an articulate voice within the jazz community, Warren Smith found himself deep inside the Motown scene throughout the 1960s and 70s. Being the unsung percussionist on the scene with Bernard Purdie, Warren played on all the Gladys Knight and the Pips' 45 hit singles, performed on numerous occasions with Dionne Warwick, did several tours, recording sessions and TV dates with Harry Belafonte, backed up Nat King Cole on its summer tour of New England, and toured with Barbra Streisand throughout the U.S. in 1965, and worked on the staff orchestra at ABC New York, performing on the Jimmy Dean Show and the Les Crane Nipsey Russell Show. Warren recorded on the only collaborative album done by Marvin Gaye and Tammy Terrell, worked as musical director for Janis Joplin in 1969, playing The Ed Sullivan Show, the San Francisco Ice Palace, and her only European tour, recorded, toured, and did live TV performances with Aretha Franklin from 1965 to 1978, including a performance at the 1971 Montreux Jazz Festival. He also played there with Tony Williams that same year. Warren has remained a prominent percussionist and drummer within the jazz world, performing, touring, and recording with every progressive from Charles Mingus to Miles Davis, from Earl Richard Abrams to Sam Rivers, Max Roach, Boom, Jabawari, David Murray, Sonny Sharrock, Anthony Davis, and many other masters of the music. His story is a story of American music, from bebop to hip-hop. Warren Smith was born May 14, 1934, in Chicago, Illinois, to a musical family. His father played saxophone and clarinet with Noble Sissle and Jimmy Noon, and his mother was a harpist and pianist. At the age of 4, Smith studied clarinet with his father. He graduated from the University of Illinois in 1957, then received a master's degree in percussion from the Manhattan School of Music in 1958. One of his earliest major recording dates was with Miles Davis as a vibraphonist in 1957. He found work in Broadway pit bands in 1958 and also played with Gil Evans that year. In the 1960s, Smith accompanied Aretha Franklin, Nina Simone, Lloyd Price, and Nat King Cole. He worked with Sam Rivers from 1964 to 1976 and with Gil Evans again from 1968 to 1976. He also was a founding member of the Max Roach's percussion ensemble Boom 1970. In the 1970s and 1980s, Smith had a loft called Studio Wiz that acted as a performing and recording space for many young New York jazz musicians, such as Wadada Leo Smith and Oliver Lake. Through the 1970s, Smith played with Andrew White, Julius Hemphill, Mulhall Richard Abrams, Nancy Wilson, Quincy Jones, Count Basie, and Carmen McRae. Other credits include extensive work with rock and pop musicians and time spent with Anthony Braxton, Charles Mingus, Henry Threadgill, Van Morrison, and Joe Zawinul. He continued to work on Broadway into the 1990s and has performed with a number of classical ensembles. Since 1970, Warren Smith taught at Adelphi University and SUNY Old Westbury and continues to teach, work, and perform today. A retired university professor, department head, and mentor, Warren Smith is the history of American music, from bebop to hip-hop.
Race cars. Depends on who's playing the hand. Race cars. Most everywhere they're the joker. But here, boy, when folks play them here,